Welcome to GRE Snacks, snackable episodes about the GRE exam and graduate school admissions. I'm Tyler, founder of Achievable, and we have an affordable GRE course that includes everything you need to ace your GRE exam. A full textbook, videos on key topics, tons of GRE questions backed by our memory-enhancing algorithm, a built-in study planner and essay grader, and full-length practice exams. You can try it out for free by going to achievable.me, and if you like it, the code podcast will get you 10% off at checkout. Now, let's get started. Today, we've got Hillary Schubach from Shine Admissions back on the show. And Hillary, I'd love if you could just introduce yourself and your company.
Thank you for having me. My name is Hillary Schubach. I'm the founder and president of Shine MBA Admissions Consulting. We are a Los Angeles-based admissions consultancy who serves top MBA admissions candidates and other graduate school candidates around the world and help them achieve their dreams of attending the top schools.
Fantastic. Yeah, and that makes you a great person to talk about today's topic, which are the MBA admissions trends in 2024, and also, tips and tricks along the way. So I want you to kind of kick us off. What's the biggest and most impactful trend right now going into 2024?
The biggest trend, oh my. Well, there are a few. I think one of the hot topics certainly has been AI. And I know we've done a session just discussing AI, and I'm sure there'll be so many more to come. But that has had an impact on the process and the way that schools are viewing AI and tech innovation and the future of this sector.
Hmm.
So that's one big one. So we can
Yeah,
talk a
let's
little bit
let's
about
let
that.
yeah, I was gonna say let's dig into it. Let's go kind of
Yeah.
one at a time. So with AI, I mean, I feel like the kind of most obvious thing is they're worried that you're going to use it to write your essay. Is that roughly correct? And what do you think MBA admissions programs are either doing about it, or, do they just kind of, is it a concern for them?
Well, it's an opportunity, it's a concern, it's a reality, and everything in between. Schools
Hmm.
seem to be embracing the reality and recognizing that it's not going away, but their positions on uh, where AI fits into the development of an application is it differs school to school and it's continually evolving. So my best advice for any applicant is to read the school's positions on AI and other tech tools and support tools
Right.
as you embark upon the process. Like go through the honor code, look on their websites and see what they have to say. Because there are some schools that are like, hey, this needs to be your work, but use the tools you need to use. And others that say, we do not want you to use AI at all in crafting your essays.
Hmm.
Many seem to fall a bit in the middle. It has to be your work, but some really do seem open to the concept of building some initial frameworks and ideas from AI, but it does ultimately
Right.
to be your own work, as with everything.
Well, realistically, if you write it all yourself, but you use AI either to give you ideas or, like you said, come up with a framework, I mean, it's going to be pretty hard for them to really tell anyway, right? Like at the end of the day, I think as long as you do the writing yourself, it's okay. I think where you get into trouble is where you copy paste what AI wrote for you and put it in your essay and maybe you edit it, but still, that's a lot more dangerous to me.
We, yeah, I mean it's pretty easy to tell. I mean, certainly these admissions committees are staring at essays all day long, and they can sniff
Mhm.
out an authentic essay versus something that sounds like it's come from Chat GPT. There's certain styles these AI tools have, and
Yep.
so number one, it's very possible that they can tell. Number two, um, they don't know the these tech tools don't know you, so
Mhm.
the ideas could be related to building, a phrase or a nice, smoother sounding phrase around your idea, but they're never going to be able to share your story. And so just
Right.
consider it as a support tool, like anything else, like like a spell checker, like a admissions consultant. Like consider it an opportunity to support and smooth out your process, but truly write from your own your own heart and make it your story. Um, and embrace the honor code as well. It's a challenge. Like tell them who you are, let them get to know
Right. Well, and certainly I think it's like maybe obvious, but just like worth saying out loud. If they feel like you've broken their honor code, they're not going to accept you. So, you're going through all this other effort to apply to an MBA program. You're probably spending months of time and hundreds or even thousands of dollars preparing for the GRE or the GMAT. You're spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars across all of your application fees. You might even be flying to schools to attend things. Like, why would you not take this little bit of extra effort to just write your essay in your own words? I don't think it's worth it.
It's that I couldn't say it better myself, because even before AI existed, I used to use a similar kind of a framework to present um, prompts to clients when they were being faced with questions they didn't want to answer, like, have you ever been put on academic or disciplinary probation in college? Some of those little short answer questions that get asked, they sometimes the candidate will look at me and say, do I really have to fess up to this very silly disciplinary violation that I had when I was in my fraternity freshman year of college? And my answer is just, would you rather lie about it and then spend the next 2 years looking over your shoulder even while you're at business school if you got in,
Mhm.
and then somehow they find out, they finally finish a background check on you and it shows up in your record somehow? This very minimal unimportant thing could completely derail your entire experience, because if the schools take the honor code more seriously than just about anything, so it's
Mhm.
never worth risking that kind of a violation for whatever reason.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, and in the meantime, AI can be used for a lot of other things. I feel like you could use it to generate lists of schools for you. I feel like you could feed it your resume and ask it to write an essay about you to like get ideas. I feel like you could, like you said, take sentences and say, hey, help me rearrange this sentence to sound better or whatever. Though again, like you said, once you've read enough ChatGPT essays, which I also have through my work, like you can tell pretty quickly. AI uses a lot more flowery vocab than is really necessary most of the time. It also loves to have sentences that are interjected with commas that are basically like point number one, comma, and the result of point number one. And so there's just like so many things that are little tells. So, use it to brainstorm, but probably that use it for support and not for writing. I think that's going to be the easiest way to stay in the clear here.
Absolutely. And with everything, use anything, any friend, any consultant, any spell checker, anything you can find as support, but not to do.
Yeah.
Use nothing but your own brain and hands to do.
Yeah. So then what is, other than AI, which is obviously a hot topic, what are sort of the other big trends going in 2024?
Well, along those lines, I've seen a number of schools really embrace and increase their incorporation of video based questions and
Hmm.
essays into the admissions process. Um, Schools do interview their candidates ultimately to get to know them as a person before they accept them, but now more and more we're seeing schools incorporate something video based with the initial submission. So even before they get to the interview process and the decision of whether to interview someone, they've gotten a chance to hear from the candidate in their own voice, which is great. Some schools do more of like an open-ended, tell us about yourself, you've got 1 minute, tell us something about who you are outside of work, or whatever the question might be. And others are very specific questions to be responded to, like a
Hmm.
true little mini interview that are evaluative in nature. So, of course, these are all very clearly spelled out on each school's websites and the applications. So, they're coming, and there's lots of great preparation that they help you with, so that by the time you get to click record, you're ready to roll and you know what you're doing. But it's just a chance for schools to get to know somebody and hear from them directly, which is increasingly important in the age of tech tools and other resources that can help a candidate polish themselves. This is a chance to hear their authentic voice firsthand.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I really do feel like it's also just important to like, how do you say this? Set the video up correctly. I've gotten into videos recently for, marketing work basically. And I've interviewed a lot of people, and so like I've seen kind of firsthand how some of these interviews can go if you don't have the right setup. You really got to have a nice presentable video experience for the viewer. And what I mean by that is, please, dear Lord, do not have all your lights off in the background so you're like the light shining from the computer is the only light on you. It really is not flattering. Be in a well-lit room, have a plain background. Like if you can, like move your desk or move your table or wherever you're doing the interview so that you just have a plain white background and there isn't stuff going on in the background. Obviously dress well, like treat it like an interview. Um, all these things really make your video a lot more presentable and will just it also show that you kind of pay attention to detail and pay attention to presentation, which are things business schools care about anyway.
Yes, and if you're going to have something in your background, at least have it look professional and represent you and your brand, what your style is. So you can certainly have a desk if you wish, or it could look out of a nice clean window, but just clean, detail oriented,
Mhm.
calming, not distracting. Professional is really the key.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And then in addition to that, do some practice videos. And then my last tip would be don't read from a script. Like have bullet points, for sure. Bullet points are really helpful, but don't read from a script because your voice, your tone changes, your inflection changes, and then everyone can tell you're reading from a script, and it's just not the same authenticity.
Yes, and this actually goes for in person interviews as well. One of the pieces of feedback that admissions directors have given to us as consultants in our conferences that we attend with them is just tell your clients, please be authentic, have a conversation with us. We want to enjoy it as well. And if it's overly scripted, I mean, that is a true mistake in any type of or get to know you situation. So prepare, practice, but make it feel like it's really coming from your heart. And also to speak clearly, make sure recognize that someone's going to have take notes on it and interpret what you're saying. So it's really got to be discernible,
Hmm.
um, and try to relax a little bit. I mean, definitely take it seriously. It is a professional touch point that they are going to be evaluating, but try to enjoy it. I mean, it's just a little bit of video content. Some schools, for some schools, it's impromptu video content. So they're not going to judge your entire life's work based on a few minutes of video recording. So just recognize it's not going to be the end all be all of your entire application. It's just a chance for them to bring some questions to life and get a sense of you outside of the paper version.
Yeah, great. Well, yeah, I actually think the move to video is a good thing overall. I think that just generally, the more that you can kind of get to know the person as a person before they do the interview, the better, because basically, like, that is a lot of the time what people are making decisions based off of when everybody has very good grades and very good scores and things like that. Um, so other than that, what are sort of the other big trends coming in here? What else did you want to talk about today?
Well, I think it's fair to say that you can expect or should expect some questions related to DEI.
Hmm.
Maybe not from every single school, but we've seen a number of schools either incorporate DEI related questions into their actual essay questions or their interview questions, and just trying to get a sense of somebody and how they create an inclusive environment, even if
Hmm.
it's just making somebody feel more welcome in a setting. So it's really designed to be something that's approachable for any candidate. It doesn't have to literally be around diversity.
Hmm.
The core of the question is about times when you've taken steps toward bringing others to a room, to a conversation, to a setting, and how you interact with people and getting a chance to see how you'll be in a campus setting. A lot of schools really do place tremendously high value on their communities, especially some smaller schools or more remote schools, and so this is a chance for them to get to see what how you act around your values.
Right. Yeah. And it also, I think, is just going to be an important part of your experience in graduate school, no matter what, right? Because I think that that's a important priority for graduate schools. is to have more diverse groups. I mean, I think it's like 60% of graduate school students are white. And, I think that that is still well higher than undergrad now, as undergrad has become more inclusive. So I expect that, graduate school is going to follow suit. And frankly, the world is going to follow suit. If you expect that you're never going to have to essentially encounter diversity in your working life, you are very mistaken.
Yeah, absolutely. And just with regard to business school specifically, and other graduate programs, but particularly business school, there's really an emphasis on diversity in terms of not just your background or your race, but genuinely like the lived experiences that you had. So
Hmm.
whether that's defined by your professional background and maybe somebody comes from a manufacturing setting and another person comes from professional services, and one person's working with people in Bangladesh and others are working with middle American consumers who have a $10 couponing budget to feed their whole family for a week. So it's all of these unique touch points from your function, your industry, your geography, all comprises diversity. And so especially for business schools and public policy schools and others that are intentionally putting very diverse groups in a room so that they can have these debates and discussions, these are all settings in which you can use stories of inclusion, diversity, to tell these, to answer these questions. So just remember, when you see something that says DEI or anything of the sort on your essays or in an interview question, look well beyond the more traditional definitions of that term, because really anytime when you've been, let's say, just even on a cross-functional team,
Hmm.
and you've tried to bring differing voices together, differing stakeholders together to reach common ground or to make sure that everybody's perspectives are heard, that counts. So that's what's so beautiful about grad school. When are you ever going to get to sit in that kind of a room with
Right.
all of these different people?
Yeah, I mean,
So,
realistically, not many other times. You should lean into it, right? Like you should really be looking forward to this, I think, because it can be eye-opening.
yeah. By the way, one just on this note too, it's just making me think of things like the Stanford team-based discussion interview process, where uh, they've got instead of a traditional interview, they bring in students and they're in a room and they're working on a little team project for their interview, and they're being observed. And again, it's just they're watching how you advocate for others, perhaps, or how bring people into the discussion. Maybe there's somebody that's a little bit quieter or shy and just sitting out, and the loudest voices are dominating the discussion, and that person might have the world's best idea. And are you the one that brings them in, or are you the one that's steamrolling over other people? So more and more schools are really trying to get a sense of who you are when you're going to be in that room in real life, uh, certainly at school and then beyond as a professional representing their alumni.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I've never heard that before just because I'm not an admissions consultant, but that's a cool interview process. I like it. Um,
Mm.
well, so then with DEI, right, I think it's sort of an adjacent topic that is still kind of new, right, is the SCOTUS ruling on affirmative action. How do you feel like that's impacting MBA admissions this year?
Well, yeah, it's definitely an adjacent topic, because given that admissions can no longer take race, or given that they are now prohibited from even asking questions about race as part of the uh, data collection process for admissions purposes, they now really want to give applicants a platform to share their stories of how perhaps race or their lived experiences or culture or just their background or any aspect of their upbringing might have shaped who they are. So if they can't ask direct questions for the admissions process, but they are very interested in getting to know somebody's experiences and influences, what do they do? Well, schools have always had an optional essay and places to write things that didn't have a home elsewhere in the application, but I've certainly observed over this past year in particular more and more free squares of sorts, like free spaces, even in the data forms, where they're genuinely leaving people a space talk more about those aspects of their background. So while they can't ask a direct question about how you do or do not define your race or ethnic background, they can give you a place to share if you want to anything that might be. So expect to see those free spaces and don't hesitate to share any aspects that you think would be relevant so the school can see what diverse perspectives you bring to the table.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other big thing too, I think, is that essentially, whether you call it a loophole or not, like the Supreme Court, Justice Roberts made it clear that obviously your experience and your story is relevant to the admissions process, and if that includes your background, then I mean that of course it does, right? So they just can't really like collect data on it, and they can't officially make admissions decisions on it. But I feel like the schools are going to be kind of sussing out what that gray area looks like over the coming years. Some schools, particularly the ones named in the lawsuits, are going to be more careful, is my guess. But I feel like in general, academia is still pretty committed to a diverse student body as a whole. And so that I think it is something that if it is an important part of your story, you should still absolutely share it, of course.
Yeah, and schools do collect race and ethnicity data. They can and should and be aware of who they're accepting in their class and monitor their own trends and progress, but they just can't use it in the admissions process formally,
Mhm,
officially. But again, like just discussed and as you brought up, I mean they're going to know. I mean they're going to meet people.
mhm,
So as it relates to something that they can see visually about a person, once they meet them, they may or may not have a sense of their background.
mhm.
Um, but there are so many other aspects of you know your your how I'll just say there are so many other aspects of how you define yourself
Right.
uh, that can't be seen, and if they're important to your story, even if you appear to be from a overrepresented background, you can and should share that.
Mhm.
Just because you look one way doesn't mean that you've lived a traditional, uh, you know, a path, a traditional or typical path.
Yeah.
So anything that's relevant to what kind of how you define yourself is going to be
Well, and that was what
well
I was going to
shared.
follow up on was like at the end of the day, we talked about, people coming from diverse experiences, like someone's family is in manufacturing or someone was a farmer, who knows? But the point is that like that almost matters more, like, and always kind of has mattered a bit more, than like, what sort of like race you identify as or things like that in two admissions committees. At least I like to think that. And I think that in general now, lean in onto what makes you special and unique and interesting and don't worry so much about, whether you feel like you're gonna fit neatly into any kind of box. Because at the end of the day, they don't even want that. Um, the other thing also is that just I think that the whole movement of MBA admissions in general has been towards more kind of like interesting and dynamic people doing interesting and dynamic things, right? So that should really be the focus of your application, in my opinion, about what makes you unique and special.
And however you define that,
Hmm.
like it's if for some people it has to do with their family upbringing, the growing up on the farm.
Hmm.
Um, and I've had clients who've written the most gorgeous essays about growing up on a farm. So, and they were not from an underrepresented group in terms of their race and ethnicity, but that was their upbringing, and that was a big defining aspect of their story. There are other people for whom they grew up in you know a more gosh I,
Yeah, yeah, we don't need
there are other
examples.
people
I
for whom
understand.
yeah like exactly like it's if your story is more about your upbringing or your what you've accomplished or how you've been facing hardships in the world, whatever you feel has been an influence on who you are
Hmm.
is what you should focus on.
Yeah, agreed. So then let's go on to another trend here. And in our notes, we were talking earlier, you talked about showing interest. And so that's interesting. I mean, I think showing interest has always been important. What makes it a trend for this year?
Showing interest. So you are referring to showing interest in the school as a candidate, like demonstrating how passionate you are about the program.
Hmm.
Is that what you're okay? So yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that has become an interesting trend is the variety of touch points that you can now engage in over time.
Hmm.
So back in the day, candidates would worry, if I don't fly to campus, is that going to look bad? But I'm not in a position to fly to campus.
Right.
I'm not, I can't take the time off work. I live in China, whatever it might be. And now there's so much virtual programming that has emerged since the pandemic, and schools have decided in many cases to, leave those as available options. So now you really have the flexibility of going to campus, going to a virtual event, doing things in your local market. And so there really are no excuses anymore to not really engage in one format or another. And so I think in terms of showing interest, it's just ever more important to just do
Hmm.
something, because there are so many easy opportunities, and like turn that camera on during that virtual session.
Hmm.
Like let them see that you're present, that you're not just like, it's on in the background. Like
Right.
be part of the conversation, even if it's virtual. And that all makes a difference to them. They don't need you to get on a plane if it's not convenient for you to do so.
Right. And be engaged. I mean, one of the things, like, I made a mistake when I was interviewing for a job straight after college, where, I like did really well in the interviews, but then afterwards I went and, called my dad to talk about the interviews while they were doing kind of like the post-interview, like, how you say, like kind of happy hour-ish, right? Like they had a lot of people interviewing at one time. It was like 20-ish people. And, I was like excited to talk to my parents about it, but they were like, you like go back in there because like you're showing them that you don't really care, right? And that's the thing that I think a lot of these admissions officers, it's those subtle cues that they pick up on, right? Like if you attend a virtual session and you don't turn your camera on, you don't do anything, they're basically not going to count you as even really having done much. That doesn't show interest. That shows, checking a box because you feel like you should. Um, and what does interest look like, right? Like it's like asking about like the classes, asking about like XYZ, trying to talk to a specific person because heard about their book. Um, this is all like stuff that's kind of hard to fake, and it's really important it's like the subtle signals that it gives are often some of the most important to people in an admissions committee.
Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of it's an opportunity, but also a new challenge. All this virtual stuff, because it's just so easy to dial in, and I'll just be there and dial in. But it definitely doesn't look the greatest if every single thing you do for a school is camera off and kind of not participating in any way. It's easy to be part of it, but you do have to step up almost a little bit more and make sure that they see that you are really really part of the conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
So don't be fooled by the ease of
Hmm.
access, and be still your best self. Recognize the professionalism that's needed to really show your genuine
Hmm.
interest. And actually, it's not so much a trend of 2024, but more and more as like everything's digital and email. We don't write thank you notes anymore by it's you send an email, all these little things. Don't be too casual. It's just all of our our texting life, etc., is just made us a bit more casual than we used to be. And I always caution people, don't be casual with your admissions committees. I know even the tones of the
Hmm.
applications are very casual compared to old days. They're like, hey, we just want to get to know you. And, they try to endear themselves to you. But the truth is, these are people that are still in a position to judge you. So pretend that you're interacting with the head of a company you really want to work
Hmm.
for. If you're going into consulting, pretend it's the head of like McKinsey or Bain, and that's who you're writing this letter to. How would you what would be your introduction and salutation for that letter? And then treat the admissions officers with that same level of respect. I mean, I know they try to be accessible and make you feel like, they do want you and they want you to like their experience, but you're still being assessed. And frankly, it's not just for the admissions process, they're assessing you as a candidate who would potentially be part of their student community and then go in front of their recruiting partners, their corporate partners. So they want to know, how will you reflect our student body, our alumni body out there in the world? So that's part of what they're looking at, trying to gauge your professionalism.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, I was going to say, if, not the CEO of McKinsey, but maybe like, you know, a family member that's kind of a pain and like very judgy, like your grandpa or something, or your grandma, and like you're trying to put your best foot forward while also not making it too over the top. Like it's like striking that balance. That's at least what came to mind for me. But yeah.
Well, and I mean, fair point, because you want to, like, when you think about interview preparation, you want to dress for the job that you want.
Mhm.
So if you're applying, if you're presenting yourself as a candidate from a very formal background who's looking to do a very formal career path, and they're interviewing, in that light, then hey, show yourself, give them a sense of what you might be like as that professional. If you've come from a real, like a startup tech background, and three people who are, um, you know, cleaning the bathrooms and then building strategy that, all in one day, then they might expect you to have more of a business casual tone. And so read the room, present yourself as the professional you want to look like, but also, recognize who you're talking to. If you're meeting an alum at a Starbucks in, Minneapolis, like maybe don't come in that extremely formal, suit, but maybe if you were showing up on campus and you knew you were meeting with like a senior member of the admissions committee, then you might adjust your style accordingly.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's all really good advice. And I mean, I think it's even, I mean, if I were interviewing like an alumni or something, I would even ask. I think it's pretty reasonable to ask, like, hey, like, do you want me, like, should I dress formally, or, should we, like, would you like this to be more casual? And they'll tell you. I mean, alumni don't really care that much. I mean, some of them I'm sure are like, you know, really high up in some industry and they're very judgy, let's say, and they might be coming from like a more formal expectation. And so maybe, you go on their LinkedIn and you see that, they're like SVP at some big, like very suit type of company, then maybe you just wear a nice suit and you don't ask that question. But if, they're like the VP or director at like a tech firm, they probably never wear a suit. So I think it's okay to kind of ask if you don't know. But you definitely can't hurt yourself that much by being overdressed. You can hurt yourself by being underdressed.
I mean, that is the bottom line. If you're really in doubt and you just for some reason don't have the opportunity to, or feel that you have a good entryway to ask for guidance, then just use your best judgment and just look
Mhm.
professional. Like, maybe it doesn't have to be a suit, but is a nice pair of pants and a dress shirt ever going to go wrong? Or perhaps a tie, but no jacket, or carry a jacket. If you have that available to you, you'll always look
Mhm.
sharp. So again, just consider the job you're applying for, and consider who you're speaking to and the setting.
Yeah, exactly. Other than that, any other like admissions trends that you want to talk about today?
Well, I think it's worth mentioning that, I mean, candidates may or may not know this, new candidates, but the testing has changed a
Mm,
bit. So that's kind of fun and exciting. So the GRE and the GMAT are both now shorter. So no longer are people taking the full length tests. They're kind of roughly half the length. But that's all just very exciting. That's really all I guess I want to say, because we don't really have any any data to prove anything. It's just all very new. But of course, the schools are embracing these exams, and so I mean, hey, if there's someone out there who's been debating whether to apply to school, and the test was the bane of their existence, and they just couldn't imagine going through a testing process again. Just know that it's still the same, roughly the same material, and it's roughly the same extensive preparation, but the duration of the test is no longer as much of a marathon as it is a half marathon, and it's just much more accessible. And so if that was ever a barrier for you, then that's great news.
Right.
Hopefully for you, and we certainly will get the data soon enough with regard to how people are scoring, and maybe class averages end up shifting a little bit in some capacity, but for the most part, we're just steady state moving on to these new tests as the gold standard. And
Yeah.
so that's
And I
cool.
think also the other thing too that I've noticed in sort of the admissions world, I mean, I think test optional is here to stay forever because it means that more people apply, which is good for their metrics. So like it's kind of like you have to be test optional if your competition is in a way, unless you're MIT, and then it doesn't really matter. People are still going to apply to MIT, but in general, that's why test optional will always officially be the stance. But what I'm hearing from both admissions committee people and from admissions consultants is that it's really test preferred for a lot of these MBA programs in particular. For graduate programs, if you get good grades, you can maybe get away with skipping the GRE. But for MBAs, GRE or GMAT is still strongly preferred.
Well, and it's really required for most programs. There are definitely some that allow you to apply for a waiver. And we can talk about that for a second, but it's, you usually don't have a choice but to either submit a test or be accepted for a test waiver.
Yeah,
But there's some pros and cons of doing that. So if you want, you can chat for a moment about test
sure.
waivers. It's new terrain for some folks. So test waivers have been around since, I guess, the pandemic was really, I believe, the genesis of it. Obviously, inability to get to testing centers and such. But nowadays, some schools still have that as an option. And what that means is you submit, you follow the instructions on the website, but you submit a few credentials and usually a paragraph or two explaining why you feel like you have the quantitative and analytical abilities to thrive in the classroom and thus are seeking this waiver. But it's really meant for people with a clear demonstration of those, let's just say, quantitative and analytical support points, be it a CFA, strong major in some technical background or finance, or really heavy analytical quantitative type of day-to-day job. So it's like usually a hybrid of a few different things, maybe some extensive coursework from calculus back in the day. So you'll see whether you think you even have a shot before you bother. And then they give you pretty quick turnaround so that you know well before you apply, typically. Well before you apply whether you've gotten the
Mhm.
waiver. But the key is, like, it's great if somebody is only applying to schools that offer a waiver and they can get away with not having to take the test. Like, that's great. Good for you. But there aren't enough schools that offer waivers. Like, almost without a doubt, candidates are going to be applying to schools that require that
Mhm.
test, whether it's the GMAT or GRE. So if you're going to take the test for another school and you're going to do well enough to submit it to, let's say, Chicago Booth, why on earth wouldn't you want to submit that score to your other schools? Now, the key is, like, if you did horribly, then you're thrilled to not have to submit a horrible score to, a school that gives you the waiver. But most likely you're going to be working hard enough on the test to get it at least up to snuff for a different school. So just think hard about whether you're really doing yourself any favors by withholding a decent test
Mhm.
score from your other schools, because schools like data. So yeah, a terrible score, keep it back. But if it's like decent enough, I mean, that's just a data point they may want to see. And sometimes we find that people who've been approved for test waivers are then waitlisted because the schools liked the candidate, but they felt like maybe they didn't have enough information about them. And then that candidate ends up going back and taking or taking their
Mhm.
test to hand in a score. That's often the first thing that I suggest to somebody who's on a wait list. If they, well, regardless of test waiver, one of the first things is I look at their test score and I say, is that one of the reasons why they were probably waitlisted? Because the school was hoping they might do a little better. So just consider that schools do like data. If you're submitting a score good enough for another school, like another great school, definitely send it to all schools. And anyway, in general, it's always better to show them something that supports your candidacy than to withhold something and leave them wondering.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you said it right there. If you have a good or great score, there's no reason not to send it. If you don't have a good score, then you shouldn't send it. Well, so when you don't send a score, like fair or not, what's going to be the first assumption of the admissions officer? I mean, that's just the truth, right? So you have to, I think you have to take the test for sure. You've got to at least get something. And then at that point, you can kind of make a decision on how to do it strategically from on school by school basis. But I would say, you can look up the percentiles, which is like out of 100 people, where did you fall? For every school, I believe, like their most major programs. And if you're at least above the 25th percentile, which means you're between 25 and 50% out of the 100 people, I would still send it. And I think, yeah, that's at least my unprofessional, not an admissions counselor advice.
Well, it's, you want to look at the range. Ideally, there's an 80% published range. So they're just removing the outliers
Right.
from the range. And they show you where 80% of the class falls. And just look where you are there. If you're at the bottom, I mean, there's people lower than you, but not many, right? So where do you want to
Mhm.
be? Like, where would you want to be if you see where 80% of the class falls? Like, I'd want to be at the top. I'd want to be over that top. I'd want to be top, the top. So it just depends on, of course, like who you are, how well you test,
Yeah.
and all of the things. But like, just consider it as a competitive positioning point. Like, where you are in that range is, that's you compared with the candidates that are going to be applying against you.
Mhm.
So you want to do as well as you can. But just to be fair too, I do think that, admissions committees are busy, and they don't have time to really think too hard about information you don't give them. So I don't think they sit and judge somebody for not sending in a score. I mean, if they offer a waiver, they're happy to do that. And I don't believe that they think somebody's not sending the score because it was a bad score and they're a terrible test taker and they must be dummies. Like, I don't think they think that hard about it. I think they think, this person is, they've worked hard. They got a CFA. They've been a finance major. They've convinced us they don't need the test.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
agree. They don't need the test.
CFA doesn't
Like, I think,
usually do that for you. That's a lot harder than these tests.
yeah. But I mean, just, in general, if you don't submit it and they give you a waiver, great. But just consider, if you do end up taking it for other schools, for other reasons, if before you choose to not send in that score, really think hard about, if it wouldn't be possibly an added benefit to
Mhm.
adjusting. And if you decide no, if you think that's the weakest point of your application is that test you took for your other schools, then don't include it because you've earned the right to not submit it as, if they've accepted you for a
Right.
waiver. But it's nice to have that in your back pocket should you need to prove your
Great.
capabilities.
Anything else before we wrap up?
No, I think that's covered a lot of ground. It's been great
Yeah, a
here.
lot going on. Great. Well, this has been Jiri Snacks, hosted by Tyler from Achievable with Hillary Schubach from Shine Admissions Consulting. And Achievable has a great online
Thank you
Jiri
so
course you
much.
can try for free by going to achievable.me and use the code podcast to get 10% off.
Thank you so much. And if you have any questions or need to reach me, you can find me at shineadmissions.com.
Great. Thank you.